The first thing I'm going to tell you is this. Any practice is better than no practice. The more you listen in your target language, the better you'll get at it. However, there are better, more efficient ways to practice your listening other than listening to podcasts 24/7. In this video, I will explain the different ways that you can go about practicing your listening. But more importantly, I will cover what I would do to practice listening if I were to start learning a language all over again. Let's get started. Before we get started, you should know that it's most likely most efficient to consume comprehensible input. This is material that is slightly above your skill level. This allows you to learn a language without being completely overwhelmed. For example, if you know nothing about tonal languages and you decide to practice your listening by listening to podcasts, it's going to be a rough time for you. Rather, it would make more sense to listen to single words with subtitles, and then single words, and then a few words with subtitles, and then a few words without subtitles, and then sentences with the subtitles, and then sentences without subtitles, and so on and so forth. Knowing this, I will list the different things you can do to practice your listening in order from beginning to expert. And the most useful thing you can do to practice your listening will be at the end. Resource number 1 is music. And I'm going to start out with a controversial take, which is that music is not a great way to practice your listening. It's a fantastic resource to use to learn how to love your language, but I wouldn't use it to practice my listening. And let me explain why. Most of the time, it is more difficult to understand somebody who is singing compared to when they're just talking. For example, if somebody raps really quickly, it's pretty difficult for you to understand them, but if somebody talks really quickly, it's much easier. Have you ever listened to an Eminem song? Like, he's impossible to understand the first go around, but you can understand me just fine even though I'm talking relatively quickly. Or how about another example, opera. I myself have an incredibly difficult time understanding what opera singers are actually singing, and I'm sure it's not a unique experience to me, which means that the less comprehensible the input is, the more difficult it will be for you to understand it. Furthermore, what people sing in songs is not really what people sound like when they speak. Take any random song. We'll go with Payphone by Maroon 5. I'm going to read some lyrics and you tell me if you've heard anybody say this expression. I'm at a payphone trying to call home, all of my change is spent on you. I'm at a payphone, I'm trying to call home. I can understand where somebody might use that phrase, but never in my entire life, other than that song, have I heard somebody say, all of my change is spent on you. Never. I would say I spent all of my money on her, all of my time on her, all my love on her, whatever Maroon 5, whatever Adam Levine is getting at in this song, but not change. And it would be very confusing to people learning English because they would think of change as in transform, not changes in money. All this to say that what you hear in songs is less commonly used than other sources you can use to practice your listening. Resource number 2, YouTube videos. With that aside, the first thing I would do to get started listening in my target language would be to look up some YouTube videos of people speaking in my target language in a very slow and articulate manner. Bonus points if they have subtitles. An amazing example of this is Speaking Brazilian Language School. The host, Virginia, speaks very slowly and very clearly, providing both subtitles in English and in Portuguese. This is the gold standard. You cannot get better than this, at least when you first start learning a language. When you get to be more intermediate level, it'll become less useful, but at the beginning, at least when you first start learning a language it is. The more experienced you become in the language, the less useful this tool will be. When you watch and listen to the video, you can pay attention to the subtitles. This allows you to match what they are saying to the words they are saying, kind of connecting the two sounds, so if you're better reading, your brain can make the connection between the sounds that they say and the words that you read. And if you don't know the word in your target language, you can simply look for the native translation. Although this is the gold standard, it is fairly hard to come by. I got extremely lucky finding Learning Brazilian Language School, but I'm sure if there are resources like that for Portuguese, there would be for more popular languages such as Spanish or Russian or Mandarin Chinese or Japanese or Korean, whatever. Resource number 3, movies. The third way to get better at listening is by watching movies. And I did this a lot when I was about 5 or 6 months into learning Portuguese. And the reason I did this is because YouTube videos can get pretty boring. Thankfully, movies are a more engaging way to interact with your target language. There are a couple of ways you can practice listening by using movies. You can either A, watch movies with English subtitles and get better at identifying sounds to the words that you know, and possibly discovering new words depending on how good you are at your language. B, you can watch the movie with subtitles in your target language and get better at identifying the sounds you would make in the target language to what you would read in the script of the target language. If your target language uses a script that's different from your native language, then you may need to be a little more advanced for this to be effective. C, you can watch the movie without any subtitles. However, I recommend only doing this if you are advanced enough in your target language to know what is going on in the movie. If you don't know what's going on, then I recommend using some form of subtitles, because at that point, it's probably a bit too difficult for you to learn effectively. Overall, movies are a great way to practice your listening in your target language since it's not restricted to a specific skill level. Resource number 4, ChatGPT. You certainly can use ChatGPT to practice your listening, but keep in mind that the sounds that ChatGPT makes won't be as accurate as a real human conversing with you, for obvious reasons. Just to the same effect that Alexa sounds less human than a human. An obvious example is the Kosha language. ChatGPT isn't actually able to form the click sounds that are commonly found in the Kosha language. Another downside is that ChatGPT speaks very, very quickly, which makes it difficult to change the difficulty rating of what you're being exposed to. No matter how hard you try, it will not slow down. I have tried to get ChatGPT to slow down. It will not listen to me, but it's fine. However, that does not mean that it doesn't have its benefits. For example, the very idea that you can listen to whatever you want in your target language makes it a very versatile tool for whoever is skilled enough to use it. So if you could survive if the world suddenly just only spoke your target language, I recommend at least trying out ChatGPT. Resource number 5, podcasts. Podcasts are a great way to practice your listening, as the conversations are clear and there's more than one voice. Obviously, having different voices exposes you to different mini accents and cadences. However, this resource is very difficult to utilize at a beginning level, so I recommend waiting until you're intermediate or advanced in your target language to start listening to podcasts. A great way to find podcasts to listen to is just to type in random words in your target language and then type podcast after it. Most likely something in your target language will pop up. You can click on it and see what it's all about. This is especially effective because you're able to pick and choose which topics you want to listen to. So if you need to learn English for work, you can type in something about working in the United States, click it, and then see what they have to say. Stuff like that. Or if you want to get better at coding, and since most of coding is done in English, you can just search up coding podcasts and then click the first one and off you go. And it doesn't even have to be useful either. You can just pick a topic that interests you. For example, I'm interested in working out. I can just type in Malhando podcasts and then just choose it, which Malhando means working out in Portuguese. But you get the point. You get the idea. Resource number 6, conversation. The final and most effective way to practice your listening is to converse with a native speaker. The reason this works so well is because you're not only hearing what they have to say, but you have to process it so that you're able to respond to it. It effectively forces you to listen and understand each word that they're saying. There really is no punishment if you miss something in a podcast or video. You can always rewind, but if you miss something that somebody else says, then there's going to be a very awkward moment while you process everything and realize you don't know what they said and then have to ask them to repeat it. And after this happens, you will associate that feeling with negative emotion and try your hardest to avoid that situation each time it comes up. Therefore, you get better. I recommend using Tandem to find people who speak your target language natively. And remember that finding a lot of different people to talk to exposes you to many different accents, which makes you more well-rounded in your target language. If you don't do this and only talk to one person, you will get really good at understanding their accent, but have a very difficult time understanding other accents. That's what I did my first year of learning Portuguese. I only spoke with one dude from Rio, and they have a very strong accent compared to the rest of Brazil. So when I talked to people from southern Brazil, I could not understand them. So learn from my mistakes and talk with people with many different accents. Finally, I want to end the video by saying, in the beginning, at a very standard conversational pace, you won't be able to understand what's going on. And that's completely normal. When I first started learning Portuguese, I could not understand anything. I remember being incredibly frustrated, and I had thought to myself that there was no way I was ever going to be able to understand somebody speaking Portuguese at a standard conversational speed. However, over time, you start to understand a little more and a little more and a little more until eventually you're actually able to understand standard conversational speed. It may just be one word every 1 minute is something that you recognize. And then it may be a couple of words every minute. And then it may be a phrase every minute. And then it may be a sentence or 2 sentences. And eventually you'll find that you're able to understand everything that they're saying. And with that, I want to thank you guys for watching, and I wish you luck on your language learning journey.